So I'm just going to let these clips kind of speak for itself on the dub versus sub debate, and if the Oshinoko dub is actually terrible, because I feel like before I really voice my opinion on the matter and really just talk about how I feel about it and everything else kind of going on behind the scenes, I want everybody to kind of weigh in their own opinion first. So I'm going to play the English dub first. I want to kind of skip through it a little bit because I don't want to get copyrighted for obvious reasons, and then I want to do the exact same for the Japanese dub as well. So let's play the English first, and then I'm going to go directly into the Japanese version. So I want to skip ahead a little bit here. So to the very iconic point where, she changes.
I sure am sleepy. Filming's just so early, Oh, are the cameras rolling?
So that is the English dub. Now let's go to the Japanese one.
眠いんだよね。収録早すぎてさ。あ、もうカメラ回ってる？
Now with those two clips out of the way, tell me your honest thoughts on how you felt about just the dub v sub. Like, do you think the dub is terrible? Do you think it's actually good? Do you prefer the Japanese dub? Do you prefer the English dub? Be honest in the comments below. I am legitimately curious to see what you guys think before I kind of weigh in my opinion. So let's talk about it. I'm not going to sugarcoat my words. I am not going to try to hold back on how I feel about it. I want to be honest. I think the dub is pretty terrible. Now, obviously, this could be a little bit of bias here, because, I did watch the Japanese dub first, and obviously, when you start with something first, watching a different version of it is just going to sound weird. That, at the end of the day, that is a big part of it. Like, for instance, it's like, watching Dragon Ball in Japanese. Like, I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, and all that in English, and when I first watched it in Japanese with Super, it was a very weird time. It was very weird and very hard getting into just the VAs. They were good. It was very hard trying to hear something different to what I'm used to. So, it definitely is jarring. And so, obviously, there is a level of bias I have personally when it comes to hearing the dub, because I am used to the Japanese. However, I will still say that in terms of critique, it is a pretty bad dub, because there has been cases to where I've enjoyed the dub and sub of many different anime. Fullmetal Alchemist is a good example. Death Note is a very good example. Yu Yu Hakusho is a very good example. Hunter x Hunter, to a degree, is a good example. There is a lot of shows that I have watched, Japanese dub and sub, and have legitimately enjoyed, back to back. And so, there is obviously, sometimes, you can enjoy both. But this is obviously not one of those cases. I think that the dub of Oshinoko is legitimately terrible, and let me explain here. I don't think the VAs are necessarily terrible voice actors. I want to make sure I kind of separate the two before I go any further, because I feel like people are instantly going to assume that I am talking about the VAs, that I'm saying the VAs are terrible. I'm not. I'm just saying in terms of the dub, it's not good. And there's always room for criticism. For instance, everything could be given criticism. I think it's fair, and it should definitely be done. And so, like I said, I'm not going to sugarcoat. I do think that the dub is legitimately terrible. However, I do think that the VAs probably have something else going on behind the scenes that we're probably completely unaware of. I think in terms of directing, if we're really taking a hard look at this clip and all that, and really just thinking about what this scene is supposed to represent in the anime, in the series, it's supposed to be the transition of Akane into, Ai. And the very voice and tone is supposed to reflect that. And I think anyone that obviously watched the Japanese version of this can agree that it was legitimately scary, the actual shift in voice from regular Akane to actually having, Ai right there in front of Aqua. It was actually a very impressive moment for the series and for VA work. I was really just stunned. And I think everybody that watched this in Japanese could agree it was a very stunning moment, because if you didn't know any better, you would assume Ai's VA came back to voice this very moment, but it actually was Akane's voice actor that did this moment. So that's what just makes this incredible. It's a very impressive display of talent and skill from the VA for the Japanese dub. So when we get into the actual dub, the English dub version, and you hear Akane's voice basically not change whatsoever, but it gets a little bit louder, obviously there's going to be those that are going to say this is terrible. And like I said, I do agree that it is terrible. But is it necessarily the VA's fault? Because at the end of the day, there's so much behind the scenes that we're unaware of. For instance, we have seen it just with Oshinoko. It's kind of dived into it. That when it comes to voice acting, it really does come down to also the team. It comes down to the audio director or the people directing the overall, project. There's a lot of things that's not necessarily up to the VA. Because obviously the people behind the scenes with the product, they're supposed to lead like certain people to do what they want. Like, oh, you need to change your tone here, you need to do so and so like this, etc. And there's a lot of things behind the scenes that could happen that we're never gonna know. We're never gonna know the full story to it because it's never gonna be revealed. But I don't think necessarily the VAs for Oshinoko is actually terrible. And I want to kind of talk about this topic first. The VAs are apparently been under fire for the last, 12 to 24 hours ever since, the discussion of that dub v sub came out yesterday. And I'm just gonna say, you're okay to criticize, but going out of your way to tag voice actors and then just straight up, like, hate on them, like, send just unwarranted hate to them is legitimately disgusting. And once again, it just goes along with the very theme of Oshinoko. It's crazy to me. Like, this is a series, literally this arc with Akane, her very character for this moment is to showcase the toxicity of the online space, to not be toxic, not do all this harsh stuff. And obviously people don't actually apparently have reading comprehension to understand the very stories that they're trying to defend, because attacking VAs is literally doing the very thing that Oshinoko is trying to preach not to do. And, like, to tag, like, these VAs that's working on Oshinoko and send them hate is legitimately disgusting. This is not okay. You shouldn't do that. This is foul. And it's just, like, I don't condone any of this. Like, anyone that does that and they straight up attack these VAs, disgusting. That is legit disgust. And I'm going to be honest here. I think that if you look at the track record of who they voiced, etc., like, for instance, the voice actor of Akane, they voiced, Millium from Tower Fantasy, they've, voiced, or not Tower Fantasy, Millium from Slime Isekai, I don't know why I said Tower Fantasy, Shiro from Tower Fantasy, Millium from Slime Isekai, and Millium is legitimately a good voice in English. Like, I actually have watched Slime Isekai in English, and I do enjoy, Millium. I think Millium is good. I think there's a really good level of detail there. So I think that once again, it just comes down to the directing and the way the product was produced on why sometimes things can actually look necessarily terrible or sound terrible. But I'm not trying to defend the dub by any means. I am still on that side of I think the dub is terrible. But once again, I think you're going a step too far when you attack a VA. Like, when you're going that far. I think it's legitimately disgusting. Now, I do want to clarify that no hate to Einkrad News here, by the way. He's a good friend of mine. He was just bringing up a topic of debate. Honestly, I would have done the same. I would have done the exact same type of post. I don't think, bringing this up and talking about sub v dub is necessarily a bad thing, because like I said, criticism is fine. There's stuff for all that. There was nothing, mean about this post. But obviously, people from, this post and then other people that's posted this exact identical post, it's led to, these VAs being attacked. So just like, it's just, yeah, what a world we live in. But I wanted to talk about, yeah, the dub is terrible, but don't do this. Like, don't attack the VAs. Like, that's crazy. That's cringe. It's legit cringe. But okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. May you all be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.